If your fantasy football draft is on the Yahoo Fantasy app, you better hope that your league mates are not watching this video, because today we're going to go through start to finish, position by position, the number one draft strategy to take down your league mates on the Yahoo Fantasy platform. And we'll close this video out with a mock draft tackling from the 6 hole. So today, like I said, we're going to go through the Yahoo Fantasy app, the default scoring settings, how you want to go about attacking your Yahoo Fantasy league based on the value pockets at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver, and tight end. Talk about some targets that we like, talk about our overall strategy by position. Let's start with Yahoo Fantasy's default scoring settings, because I'm not sure if you guys are, casual fantasy players watching this, high stakes fantasy players watching this, but I'd imagine if you play on Yahoo Fantasy, you're probably more of a every August you get back to the fantasy scene, you're ready to watch your team. The Yahoo Fantasy default scoring settings are half PPR, 4 point per passing touchdown, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, and 1 flex type of formats. Very bog standard. I feel like a lot of people play on these type of scoring settings. Most of the advice we're going to give in this video is going to base on that scoring settings. Just a shallow league format, pretty basic, and subsequently the mock draft that we do is going to be based on those settings as well. So like I said, we're going to go position by position. Let's start with the quarterback position, Danny. And looking at this position, we can see that there's a pretty common trend for the fantasy football quarterback position on Yahoo.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway of the quarterback position, as you guys can see with all the red on the screen, is that quarterbacks are pushed up the board inherently. And it does make sense from a strategic standpoint, obviously, because it is a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, half PPR format. Quarterbacks will gain value in that type of league setting. However, as you'll point out to, when you look at the value over replacement of the quarterback position, pushing the position up as a whole is maybe not the best way to approach it.
Yeah, because value over replacement at the quarterback position is something that is going to factor in more the shallower your league is and the less scoring you get from other positions. So in non-tight end premium leagues, non-full PPR leagues, standard or half PPR scoring format where you start way less starting spots, it's not a 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, or whatever the case is like Yahoo is. The quarterback position makes up a bigger percentage of your overall scoring on any given week. And therefore, guys like Jalen Hurts, guys like Josh Allen, guys like Patrick Mahomes, who are huge, huge difference makers at the position, are going to matter more in a scoring setting like this. As you guys can see, value over replacement per game of quarterbacks, those top 1 to 3, top 5 quarterbacks have a significant advantage over the quarterbacks 6 to 12, for example, than the quarterbacks 13 to 18, for example. So if you want an elite quarterback, it definitely does make sense to take one early in this type of format. However, as you can see with our rankings, it does look like they're pushed up the board even more so than where we would pick them. I would recommend targeting some of the guys that are less red, right? Like the less red guys are the ones that you want. Jalen Hurts is actually behind ADP where we have him. Then you also have guys like Anthony Richardson, you have Kyler Murray, you have Jordan Love, guys that are like less than 10 spots below where we have them ranked, I would say is probably a good rule of thumb if you want to take a quarterback early. And also too, this entire chart is from our draft guide. We have differences between our rankings versus all of the platforms. So if you're playing on Yahoo, obviously this will be a benefit to you. If you're playing on other platforms as well, Sleeper, Underdog, NFL, ESPN, whatever, that is also available in our draft guide, and you can get the link for that down below in the description. But yeah, if you're going to target an elite guy, I think Hurts, Richardson, Kyler, and Love are the ones that I would be willing to pay up for based on this ADP.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so valuable knowing where these guys go on other platforms is that, I mean, you guys are going to have your micro takes regardless. You guys are going to have, hot takes on who's your quarterback 3 or who's your quarterback 6 in your rankings. But knowing where they tend to lie on other platforms really opens your eyes up to maybe where the value pockets are and maybe even adjusting your own ranking. So I do think that is one of the most valuable resources in fantasy football preparation for 2024 in our draft guide right now, like you kind of mentioned. But in terms of the quarterback position, like you said, if you can get values like Jalen Hurts, obviously, as you guys can see here, we even have him ahead of where Yahoo has him. Yahoo has the quarterback position as a whole pushed up, but Jalen Hurts is their quarterback 3 going after Allen 11 spots, going after even Patrick Mahomes, who we both have ranked higher. So Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, guys like that, Jordan Love also a little bit later down the board. But as you guys can see, for the most part, the late round quarterback strategy is the one we would employ in this position, because at the top, there's all that red. But once you get past Jared Goff and go on to Jaden Daniels, we're actually ahead of the market. So comparatively, we're higher on the late round quarterbacks and lower on the high end quarterbacks outside of those 2 that I mentioned.
Yeah, and the reason for that, as I detailed in the best draft strategy video that I did a couple days ago, as well as the finding the next league winning quarterback video, is that there's actually a lot of elite upside to be had with Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. All these guys are late round quarterback options. And typically you get a late round quarterback, you're kind of admitting that I'm not going to have the same positional advantage of a Josh Allen, of a Jalen Hurts, of a Joe Burrow, a Dak Prescott, a Jordan Love. But there's actually cases and outs for all of these guys to have monster seasons. So personally, I would let this position fall to me at value if it wanted an early quarterback. But if most of your league mates are already pushing up that position, already locking down that position, definitely play it by ear at the quarterback position and potentially be willing to go for these late round quarterbacks. And that's kind of the strategy at quarterback that I would employ in this type of format. We could probably pivot into running back unless you have anything else.
I got one more thing I will add. If you guys want a full valuation on how we approach quarterback position, we actually detailed this all in a recent video we did on that super flex strategy video. So if you kind of want to see how we view the value pockets, how we view the tiers, and the potential upside in certain cases for those tiers, the tell-all is in that video.
Yeah, specifically the micro player stuff on what quarterbacks would be targeting. So moving into the running back position, and obviously if you guys are followers of ours and you play like underdog fantasy and stuff, you probably know what we're about to say about Yahoo Fantasy ADP on the running back position. But again, you can see a lot of the red, particularly in the rounds 4 to 7 range, which is where the running back dead zone concept originates from, is that in home leagues, people are going to push up David Montgomery to the 47th overall pick, Kenneth Walker to the 49th overall pick, which is precisely why we don't want to draft guys like this on Yahoo Fantasy. And we'll talk about running back strategy overall in a second.
Yeah, at the running back position, it's easy to see why we're comparatively lower because the Yahoo ADP market, like you said, is stuck in 2018. The prototypical running back dead zone that we've mentioned in past videos has maybe gone away on sites like Underdog Fantasy, still fully lives on a site like Yahoo Fantasy. Specifically when it comes to running backs 13 to 27, we do see the ADP as a whole inflated at the position. The way we would counteract the position as a whole being overvalued like this at running back is that we would actually be grabbing a hero or a double hero to start our drafts. Because as you guys can see at the top, guys like Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Devon Achane, they're all guys were at about ADP, or potentially for the case of a guy like Devon Achane, actually ahead of ADP at. So for us personally, if we don't view the position as a whole being a value once you get into the round 4, 5, 6, 7 range, we would actually rather grab one or two of them in the first 3 rounds of our drafts.
Yeah, and then you can also see failing that, or maybe you get yourself a hero, get yourself a double hero, you should bypass the Joe Mixons and the David Montgomerys of the world all the way down until you get to the part where it is like a bit of a honeypot at running back, where you're round 8, round 9, round 10, Javonte Williams, Tajay Spears, Jonathan Brooks, those type of guys, the ADP and our rankings kind of balance out a lot more. So specifically, as we kind of talked about between like running backs 13 to 27 in the running back dead zone, we are going to see the running back position pushed up the board because in casual home leagues, people are worried that they're going to get locked out at running back. And I will say, this is a half PPR format. It's only a 1 flex format. So running backs generally are going to have more value than the leagues that you and I play in, where it's PPR leagues, 2 or 3 wide receivers, 2 or 3 flexes. The wide receiver position is going to be more valuable. But at the same time, it's not supposed to be this much more valuable.
Exactly. So knowing this information in mind, let's just say, for example, we'll be doing the mock draft at the end. You're at the 4th or the 5th pick. And we personally view that tier being guys like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, along with the top 3 wide receivers of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Amon St. Brown. But if you're in a Yahoo league, knowing that the running back position is not going to look ideal, whereas compared to the wide receiver position, which we'll talk about in a second, very fruitful once you get into those mid rounds, I'm actually more likely, like you said, to take a Breece Hall, to take a Bijan Robinson, even over some of those stud receivers.
Yeah, you'd rather, if you're doing a 2v2, it's like, would you rather have Breece Hall in round 1 or Justin Jefferson in round 1 when knowing that I can get Malik Neighbors in round 5 and the running back I'm getting in round 5 is like Alvin Kamara? It's like, I'm going to take Breece Hall and Malik Neighbors as opposed to Alvin Kamara and Justin Jefferson in that situation. So as you can see, some of the targets, we kind of highlighted them: Bijan, Breece, Gibbs, round 2 running backs like Barkley, Pacheco, Etienne, Achane, and then also late round running backs. This is a position that in a shallow league, especially like Yahoo is, you want to be taking late round swings on Jalen Warren, on Brian Robinson, on Tajay Spears, on Javonte Williams, Jonathan Brooks, Ezekiel Elliott, Trey Benson, Chase Brown, some of the guys that you can see on the screen there. So moving into the wide receiver position, conversely, you see a lot of green because the wide receiver position is undervalued on Yahoo Fantasy. And again, Keep in mind, it's a half PPR. It's a 1 flex format. So we're not going to be quite as high as we would be in a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex full PPR. But at the same time, it should not be this big of a disparity for where these wide receivers are going, in our opinion, versus where they are going in reality on Yahoo.
Yeah, it makes sense. If we think the quarterbacks as a whole are pushed up, the running backs as a whole are pushed up, there's got to be value somewhere. And on Yahoo, it is absolutely at the wide receiver position. The main takeaway as a whole is that Yahoo still values these veteran wide receivers, the guys that have proven it before, whereas some of the younger, potential upside wide receivers do fall down the board. Again, we still think you can grab a wide receiver in the first. Like if you're at the 101, the 102, 103, and you want to grab a CeeDee Lamb, you want to grab a Tyreek Hill, we think it's still plausible to be able to do that, anchor with a stud wide receiver. However, I will say once you get to that round 2-3 area, I would definitely want to attack at least 1 or 2 running backs, because if you just take 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers to start your draft, you're going to be at a point where once you get to those mid rounds and you see all those stud wide receiver values, you're gonna feel pressure to take a running back because of how it's pushed up the board comparatively and running out at the position, that you're not going to be able to reap the benefit of the wide receiver position where it's at its most valuable.
Yeah, not to mention in a half PPR 1 flex league, it's not as viable to go 0 RB or not as viable to go hero RB or whatever. You're better off getting your running backs early if you can. Obviously, we're not going to reach totally on ADP value just to take our running backs, but we do want to prioritize getting them at least 1 early on in the drafts, like you said, especially knowing that specifically in the dead zone in rounds 4 to 7, you can get Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Rashee Rice, Romo Dunze, guys like that who go way higher on other platforms. Not to mention, too, we didn't even show you the late round guys in this screenshot, but like Brian Thomas, Keon Coleman, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, their ADPs are like outside of the top 120 overall picks. Like you can get these guys as pure upside swings, and especially in a league format like this where you don't need to start that many players, like you're starting 6 players on any given week. Your benches need to be lined with guys like Brian Thomas, with guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, because if they turn into what we think they could turn into on their upside cases, then they would obviously be great contributors for a shallow league format. So the wide receiver position in general, very undervalued, especially in the early rounds. If you got a tiebreaker at running back versus a wide receiver, it's probably wise to go with the running back within reason. Again, don't take Jonathan Taylor over Tyreek Hill or something like that. But if it's Tyreek Hill versus Breece Hall and you're like, you know what, I know I can get good wide receivers later, then it's understandable to go Breece Hall in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, if you can get an anchor running back and still have options, like you said, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle to be able to catch up a wide receiver. I mean, if you guys play on Underdog, it's almost like the exact opposite, where the tiebreaker would lean towards a wide receiver. If you're at Yahoo, the tiebreaker would go to the running back, knowing the position as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. And the tight end position also has some value available as well. I think the biggest takeaway for me is you see the top guys, Kelsey, Laporta, and Andrews being tight end 3 is also kind of a discrepancy between Yahoo versus other platforms, because he's actually my tight end 6 in fantasy this year. The middle tier is where the value can be had. I think it's because on sites like Underdog and other places, the Trey McBride, George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts of the world are treated as a tier below Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce, but not by a whole lot. Like it's not like a 30 pick discrepancy like it is here on Yahoo. So for me, I think attacking that honeypot of tight ends is a good idea, because in a format where it's a shallow league, you do want to ideally be elite at the onesies if you can, or ideally be strong at the onesies if you can. So specifically on Underdog and other platforms, you can see that the dip between Kelce and Laporta is 10, 15 picks. And on here, it is 20, 30 picks.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that you still want to be strong at tight end, knowing that it is a half PPR, knowing that you can only start up to 3 wide receivers into your lineup on a given week, or 3 running backs into your lineup on a given week. Having a strong tight end that can consistently push for top 3 to 5 production at the position is extremely valuable in this format. Not to mention, when you actually look at the value over replacement of the tight end position, knowing you can hit on a potential top 5 option is a lot more valuable than just hitting on a late tight end 1. So for me, like you said, some of those names, we actually have Trey McBride ranked straight up higher than he goes on the Yahoo market. He is a guy that we actually would be willing to take in the top 40. George Kittle, rate aligned. Dalton Kincaid, rate aligned pretty much. And then Kyle Pitts is the biggest mispriced player, because it makes sense. The casuals are like, oh, Kyle Pitts has been bad the last couple years, knee injuries, maybe he's just not that good. I understand why Yahoo is pessimistic on Kyle Pitts, but if you guys are following the content, you'll know that Kyle Pitts anywhere outside of the top 60 is a misprice.
Yeah, and it also, holistically looking at all of these positions, it makes sense why like Devontae Adams goes high or Mike Evans
Yeah.
goes high or Mark Andrews goes high. It's like they've
Proven.
won people leagues in years past. That's the reason that they're going high. The year over year projection differences between Underdog and Yahoo are going to be vastly different. It's like, when Madden ratings come out every year and like Terry McLaurin, who's been good
Stephon
for
Diggs
a bunch
is
of
like
years.
Stephon Diggs is 9 ratings higher than Nico Collins this year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. It's Madden needs to see it first, just like your home league mates on Yahoo need to see it first before they rank these guys high, which is why you can get great values on Pitts, on Neighbors, on guys that are a little bit riskier. And best value specifically are Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers. Going outside the top 100 picks is absolutely insane. And then if you do punt the tight end position, Pat Freiermuth and Noah Fant are decent options there. So quick summary of the overall strategy. And we're going to actually implement this going into a mock draft using Fantasy Pros' Draft Wizard, where you can actually use specifically Yahoo ADP. Quarterbacks go early. So if you want to get an anchor, definitely try and do it at value if you can, or you can fade the quarterback position if necessary, because like we said, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, so on and so forth, they still have really high ceilings. It's just you don't have to draft them nearly as high as the other positions. Running backs go way too high, especially in the dead zone. Definitely try and avoid that position, particularly in the round 4 to 7 range. Hero and double hero running back draft strategies in the early rounds. 1 or 2 of those anchors, if you can, use them as tiebreakers. Definitely make a ton of sense. And then at the end of your drafts, just hammer the running back position, backfill your bench with upside swings. The wide receiver position is extremely, extremely valuable in the rounds 3 to 8 range. You can use that for tie breaks early on, knowing that you're going to get wide receivers later. And then mid tight end ones are the honeypot. Like we said, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, those guys are great values on Yahoo specifically. So we can pivot right into the mock draft and start talking about exactly how we would implement this strategy.
That flowed really well.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I think these could end up being really good. Okay. I think if we're down in the sleeper area, it should be fine.
Show that we're inputting the Yahoo Sports ADPs.
Be like, I'm going to show this part.
And do the pre-draft rankings via Yahoo.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, perfect. All right, perfect.
All right, so we are using Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. The reason we're using this is because you can actually implement specifically which ADP you want to do. If you want to use Yahoo specifically, like I said, is a half PPR default, so you have to select half PPR to use Yahoo's ADP. Even if your league is a PPR or a standard, I would recommend using Yahoo's ADP if you're drafting on Yahoo, regardless of the scoring settings changes, because the ADP is actually more important than the scoring. You can draft a little bit differently as a result. Like I said, 1 quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 1 flex is the scoring settings we're going to do. We're only going to do 6 bench spots, no defenses or kickers. Obviously, if you do play with defenses and kickers, just draft them late with your final 2 picks. And then we have Yahoo Sports ADP as the average draft position selected. We also can make adjustments. If your league is really quarterback heavy, you can actually make adjustments in the draft wizard here. You can make adjustments if your league is maybe a little bit smarter than the Yahoo ADP and doesn't take running backs as high. You can make that adjustment as well. But regardless, we are going to roll with the draft here. And we are going to be picking here from an early selection. Like I said, we're going to be picking from the 6th hole, and we are on the clock, and we do have a potential hero running back in Bijan Robinson on the board. You can see McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek, Breece Hall, and Jamar Chase went off the board before us. Again, you can see the experts recommend that we take Bijan, and that's definitely the direction we're going to go in, because again, in the early rounds, the tiebreakers, you kind of want to lean to the running back position, knowing you're going to get great value. I actually do have St. Brown ranked over Bijan in like PPR formats with like multiple flexes and stuff like that. But Bijan in this format makes more sense in half PPR.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, once you're in a tiebreaker situation between a running back and a wide receiver in the first few rounds, leaning the running back position where you can take 1 or 2 options would be my way to go, especially knowing, again, once you reach rounds 3 to 8, you can catch up at wide receiver. So for us, Bijan Robinson is in a tier with guys like Jamar Chase, guys like Justin Jefferson, guys like Amon St. Brown, guys like Breece Hall. Breece Hall obviously goes off the board at 4, so we do grab Bijan Robinson there. Now we're back at the 207. If you're a big Kyron guy, this is probably a spot where you'd be willing to take him. Like, for example, if Devon Achane had fallen back, I think that would be in heavy consideration for us. But if we're looking at the position as a whole, I mean, my highest rated player here would be Nico Collins. I would be okay with either him or if you like Drake London, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. That'd be cool.
Yeah, London would be my highest rated player. I think we are probably wise to not take a running back yet. Agreed. I think I don't think we'll get Pacheco in the 3rd round, but it's possible he falls there. I also don't mind James Cook in the 4th round too, so we could also wait on that. Let's roll with Drake London. I actually
Sure.
think it's possible because Nico Collins is one of these huge values on this platform as well. I actually think it's possible he falls back to us. So let's grab Drake London with our next pick there. Collins did go. So did Pacheco. We also see some of the other wide receivers. Brandon Ayuk did actually fall.
Or Waddle.
Deebo Samuel and Waddle. So again, this is what we talked about. It's like, had we gone Amon-Ra St. Brown with this pick, it's like we're kind of pigeonholed into taking like whoever the best running back available is. And again, we're not pigeonholed into that because we're kind of experienced fantasy players. But you might be thinking, I need to take a running back because I don't have a running back yet. And you might not be equipped or have the experience to properly execute a 0 RB or whatever. And also this type of format is not very conducive to that. So yeah, I'm glad we went with Bijan in the first round.
Quick
Which one do you want to go with here?
Well, real quick too, if you look at the board, if we're playing the opportunity bundle game of a first round and a second round option, assuming that we wanted both a running back and a wide receiver, go to the draft board real quick, just so we can kind of show them what those potential pairings would look like. So for us, we end up with Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Hypothetically, like you said, if we had gone Amon or Justin Jefferson at that 106 spot, we would most likely have taken probably Isaiah Pacheco, assuming that we would have wanted a running back there. So if we're comparing Isaiah Pacheco plus Justin Jefferson versus Bijan plus Drake London, maybe you're anti-grabbing 2 Falcons as a tiebreaker, but for me personally, I would actually rather have Bijan and London there.
Yeah, again, if you're anti-grabbing Drake London, don't go to the comments and say like we're dumb for doing that. Just take Nico or Olave
Waddle,
or whoever other receiver that you would have preferred in that situation instead. It's not really specifically about the player takes. Obviously, we're giving some of our player takes here, but I think there's a pretty clear direction that I would want to go here. We could go Ayuk. We also could go Hurts as well, because like I said, you kind of do maybe want to prioritize getting an early quarterback, and he is kind of a decent value in the early to mid third in this range that we're at. Do you want to go with a wide receiver, or do you want to grab Jalen Hurts or something?
I personally want to go with a wide receiver because I actually have all these guys ranked currently in my top 20. So the fact that we're getting them in the third round just feels like a good amount of value to begin with. My current order of them, knowing that there is a little bit of concern with the trade issue, again, not much, but it's a tiebreaker for me between Waddle, Ayuk, and Samuel. That's actually the order I have them in. Waddle at 18, Ayuk at 19, Deebo at 20. But if you have any differences, again, I would be fine capitulating to any of those 3 guys.
I do have Ayuk still the highest of this group, but I have Waddle second. So let's roll with Waddle. I'll capitulate. I took London with our first pick, so we can roll with Waddle there, and then let's see what kind of fell back to us. Again, we do have more wide receiver value that is screaming to us on the board right now. We have Bijan, Drake London, and Waddle so far. We do see a bunch of quarterbacks go off the board. We see that first group of tight ends start to go off the board with Kelsey and Laporta, and again, we see these dead zone running backs. David Montgomery at the 406 is jail.
Egregious.
Absolute jail. Like there's no way he should go that high. He goes in like the 8th round of underdog drafts, and even then I don't love the pulling the trigger on him at that point in time. Maybe you have some optimism because of the Jahmyr Gibbs injury, but even still, like David Montgomery going that high, even Walker and Rachaad White going that high, it is just egregious in my opinion. I think the quarterback position, I think it's a smidge early for Anthony Richardson. The tight ends, I feel like we might be able to get one with our next pick. So I think wide receiver is probably, again, our best bet, especially, I mean, it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. We can still start all three of the wide receivers that we take so far. Do you want to go in the direction of like a Metcalf? Do we want to go with like, Malik Neighbors or somebody like that, or Devontae Smith? What are you thinking here?
My vote would actually go to Neighbors, knowing that this is a league format that we can only start 3 wide receivers on a given week. I want to prioritize upside with my wide receiver picks. And just looking at the board, I do believe that Malik Neighbors has the highest upside given the talent level, given the potential to earn volume in that offense. So I would vote Neighbors. But again, if you want to go like Smitty or DK, like I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Yeah, I personally want to go Smith just because as much as Neighbors obviously has a super high ceiling, like we're going to have plenty of opportunity to draft high ceiling players later on with Odunze and Worthy and those type of guys. So let's grab Smitty to lock down our flex spot to start here. And then I'm sure we're going to have plenty of opportunities to grab other rookie wide receivers. Stroud fell to us. Oh, Richardson fell. Do we want to grab Richardson?
The reason why I would vote with McBride here is because we still also get the onesie position locked down, and there is the potential opportunity backdoor that Kyler falls back to us, knowing that there's 3 quarterbacks that were already taken before our pick. So we could play the game. Maybe we take McBride here, and if Kyler somehow falls back to the 607, we also lock down the stack there.
Yeah, that's smart too. Plus, we probably can't do the default Kyle Pitts on Yahoo because we already have Bijan and Drake London. That would be a little far on one offensive investment. So let's roll with McBride here and hopefully maybe Kyler falls back to us or something.
Yeah, hopefully. Let's see it. Come on, Kyler.
Oh,
no, a pick before us. Is there still
did fall back to us too?
Yeah, unlucky. I mean, sometimes you do have to play that game, but I would take that chance every single time.
I mean, I feel like taking like Pickens or somebody like super high ceiling option. I don't think it's probably the best idea to just be like, yeah, I'm just going to take Burrow or I'm just going to take whatever next best quarterback there is. I don't know if you want to take
I
one
would
of these quarterbacks, we could, but I feel like we might get one.
That's what I mean. Like we've talked about, potentially Jordan Love. Like, I'd be cool with Love, Prescott, Burrow, one of those guys at the 706. So I don't mind waiting either.
Okay, let's grab another. Do we want to grab a running back or do we want to grab a receiver? I don't think the running back position is
No,
such that
not
we
in the
probably
six.
have to take one here. Like I think any one of these guys could be good later options for us. So let's
Yeah.
just grab the best available player to me, which is very clearly either Flowers or Pickens, whatever one you want to go with.
Yeah, I'm cool with Pickens, half PPR, big play upside. Potentially again. By the time you guys are seeing this, maybe Brandon Ayuk's already been traded. Obviously, you would adjust at that point. But knowing the knowledge right now that Pickens does have that wide receiver room to himself, and when he was fully healthy and there was no Deontay Johnson on the field last year, we did see him have about 2.8 yards per route run. So I just think he's a talented football player. The upside, like you said, and I don't mind in a half PPR grabbing him in the sixth year.
Yeah, he definitely has the upside too to just be like a big play guy for us. So quarterback Burrow fell back to us.
Yep.
So I feel like that is probably the direction we should go with
I like
at
it.
that point in time. Even though we don't have him like correlated or stacked up with anything, it's just a pretty nice ADP value. Knowing that Pitts fell here kind of sucks that we have London already, because we could have gone with a different player in the second round and then maybe gotten the value on Pitts here and taken a different option there. But yeah, let's go with Burrow here. He's the best option, I think, for us at quarterback. Now, again, you guys might be wondering, like, you guys only have one running back. What the hell are you doing? Well, what we're doing is exactly what we talked about in the strategy portion, which is avoiding the running back dead zone, taking the value at wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end in that area of the draft. And now we're at a range where these running back profiles, like a Chase Brown, for example, does he really profile all that differently to David Montgomery? Does Jalen Warren or some of these guys, Javonte Williams, really profile all that differently from Kenneth Walker or Rashad White? Like, there's not a huge difference between these guys. There is a large difference between the wide receivers and the running back projections that you're looking at there. So looking at the running back position, I mean, I really like Tajay Spears. I think he stands out to me as a potential really good value here. Again, knowing it's only a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, I don't think we absolutely need to take like a Calvin Ridley or somebody like that.
Agreed.
We're already 4 deep at wide receiver. You want to roll with Spears here?
I'm perfectly fine with Spears, especially knowing down the board too. We could backfill with guys like, Corum, Dowdle, get some good depth behind.
Yeah, exactly. When you're running a hero RB like we're doing here with Bijan, he's obviously going to be our lead guy. We're basing this on the assumption that Bijan is going to carry us. That's what a hero RB does. Because you know what? Some people draft where they're like, oh my God, I need to draft more running backs in case Bijan gets injured. But like if Bijan gets injured, there's a good chance that you're probably screwed anyway. So You're better off trying to draft as if you're right, because it's a 1 in 12 chance that you win your league. Like if you draft as if you're right, you only have an 8.3% chance of winning inherently anyway. So drafting as if you're right makes it a lot better that when you are right, you really reap the full benefit of it. And exactly. So, again, we could grab another upside swing at wide receiver if we want to.
That's very tempting.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, do I want to be taking Ezekiel Elliott or Trey Benson or Blake Corum over some of these wide receivers? I feel like we probably need to go to the wide receiver position. It's simply too tempting. These type of dudes on the board.
We can nearly close off our build here. I believe we have 4 wide receivers so far, 5 wide receivers so far. You're basically like nearly your last receiver here, and then could potentially backfill back at running back, because quite frankly, there's no running back that really speaks out to me as being a clear cut above the rest of the board.
Yeah. So do we want to go Smith and Jigba, Worthy, Thomas Jr.? Which one are you thinking here? I think Worthy probably represents the highest ceiling, but I also, especially because in Smith and Jigba's case, in a half PPR receiver, there's a little bit of value there. I think between Worthy and Thomas, I'd probably be between those two guys.
I'm cool with it. Half PPR. I mean, they obviously both have a ton of upside. Honestly, again, I had Brian Thomas rated higher in my pre-draft, but also knowing the opportunity there without Marquise Brown, I think I'd actually lean Worthy at this point.
Okay, yeah, let's roll with Worthy here. McConkey actually got sniped 1 pick ahead of us.
Yeah.
I actually would have liked him as well.
I'll put him at 10.
Okay. Yeah. So how many picks do we have left? I think we only have like 3 picks left or 4 picks left. So again, this is a shallow league format that we're doing. I think a guy like Hubbard potentially makes a lot of sense for us because we don't really have a lot of production at the running back position. We did take Spears, obviously, but maybe Hubbard is a guy that can get us by early on in the season. I mean, if you guys are into drafting your own handcuff, Tyler Algier would make some sense too. J.K. Dobbins, me and you are both kind of high on as well. Which guy are you kind of leaning towards? I think probably Dobbins is my highest ranked, I think.
I would lean Dobbins. It does feel a little bit gross grabbing Hubbard in the 10th, so I would actually lean Dobbins here.
Okay, we'll roll with Dobbins. And again, the other nice thing about this type of format is like, yes, we hypothetically could close off our build, but like when you're in a really shallow league format, like we're going to talk about this during the season, but like trading to get studs, like let's say, for example, we took Jameson Williams right now, and Jameson Williams is having a breakout season, and we take Jameson Williams plus one of our bench receivers like George Pickens, and we do a 2-for-1 deal for, I don't know, Chris Olave, who had a down start to the season or whatever. Or maybe we can get all the way up to Nico Collins or Jalen, or I guess we have Jalen Waddle on our team, but like somebody like that, I think makes sense knowing the format here. Your bench, as we talked about already, in a shallow format should be just pure upside swings at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of upside swings, I think Jalen Wright would epitomize the definition of an upside swing. So grabbing him in the 11th, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you're a handcuff person, you could have definitely grabbed Tyler Algier there. Again, that would be the draw of like, hey, why would you only take more than one running back because Bijan's like your only guy through the first 7 or 8 rounds or whatever. It's like, well, if you feel that way, like just stash Tyler Algier the whole year. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to bet as if I'm right. And that's the way that I'm going to roll with it. So again, wide receiver position, not a huge group of guys that I love here. I mean, we could grab like a Dontavian Wicks or a Jalen Polk or Khalil Shakir.
How many RBs do we have right now?
How many RBs do we have?
Yeah. How many RBs do we have right now? Do we have 4 or 5?
We have 4 running backs. Yeah. We have Bijan, Spears, J.K. Dobbins, and Jalen Wright.
Yeah. I don't mind grabbing. I mean, we could also just wait on like an estimate and grab a receiver here and see if he falls back. Yeah. I am down for either. I mean, it would have been Tyrone Tracy, but unfortunately, as we're recording this earlier today, did suffer what appears to be a significant injury. So hopefully he can recover for next year. But he would have been one of my favorite targets late in drafts. Obviously, that's not a case anymore. I think Estime would be the best running back off the board right now for what our build is. But like you said, I mean, I think I would just go Shakir or Wicks and then hope a running back falls back.
Yeah, let's grab Dontavian Wicks with the upside that maybe he becomes like the number 1 in Green Bay, and then we'll see what running back falls back to us. So yeah, Estime did fall back to us. He's definitely the best available guy there. So again, we close out our build. The goal of this video basically was to show you guys, and then we get a little A- from Fantasy Pros here. The goal of this build and this strategy video was to show you guys how to exploit Yahoo Fantasy, because I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, you are going to play your fantasy football league on Yahoo Fantasy. So the best way, as we talked about through the entire strategy video, is kind of see what falls to a quarterback, play out the value, knowing inherently that, you know, quarterback is going to matter more in a shallow format. Running back position, ideally, get them early. And if you can't, like, we didn't just have running back values fall into our lap, right? Like, had Devon Achane fallen us in the second round, we would have started Bijan and Achane. It's just that didn't happen that way. ETN was gone, those type of guys. So you kind of just play the board at running back, ideally trying to get 1 or 2 anchors early. At wide receiver, just soak up the value. London, Waddle, Smith, Pickens, Worthy, like all these dudes, Wicks even too. Like, we just soak up the value at that position, get ourselves a lockdown hammer tight end in that mid tight end 1 range. Like we talked about, Trey McBride ended up being a really good value for us there in the 5th round or wherever we drafted him. So definitely really like how this team turned out. And hopefully you guys can take some of this advice into your Yahoo Fantasy draft. And of course, if you want our FSC rankings versus home league, specifically, you can see which values we have versus the Yahoo Fantasy ADP. You can check out our draft guide. That is linked down below in the description of this video. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, you got some value from it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And again, down below in the description, there is 2 ways you can get our draft guide: signing up on Underdog Fantasy using code FSE, and a $10 deposit will get you it for free. Or you can get it on flockfantasy.com using code FSE over there. You'll get 7 days for free, 30% off any of the packages. And we do have a listener league going on right now. We are drawing names for that about a week and a half from now. So if you want a chance to be in a league with both of us, you can do one of those things or both of those things to double your chances of being into the league. Site subscriber or Underdog Fantasy promo code FSE code users will have a chance to be in the league with us once they fill out the Google form that is linked down below in the description of this video. So all that interests you, check it out down below. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.